Dave and the Giant Pickle was the fifth video. We started out with Where's God When I'm Scared, which was there were just three of us killing ourselves. Then we did God Wants Me to Forgive Them, and there were still, I think there were four of us when we did that one, and we killed ourselves trying to make it, a little bit better. And then we did Are You My Neighbor, and then we did Rack Shack and Benny. And on Rack Shack and Benny, I think we were up to 6 people, and it was way too ambitious. It was huge with factories, chase scenes, the whole thing. Rack Shack and Benny, really almost killed us. So as that was winding down and it was time to write the next one, my only thought was, let's make it simple and silly.
We did it in about 4 months, which I think it still holds the record for the most quickly completed show. Even though it's simple, the story still holds up.
I was reading the story of David and Goliath, and it starts, when you get actually to the battle, it starts out, it says, the two armies, the Philistines and the Israelites, were camped out on opposing hills, and in the morning, the armies would line up facing each other and would yell at each other. They would yell, and that's how they started battles back then. They would yell, insults back and forth at each other. And the first thing that popped into my head was the Frenchman from Monty Python and the Holy Grail on the wall yelling. And I thought, okay, that's, those are my Philistines. They're going to be, Monty Python Frenchmen. Why peas? I think it was just because I knew we could afford to do a lot of simple spheres. That would be relatively easy if we had to make a lot of them. Everything else is too complicated.
Chris Olsen and I did the voices for the two up-front P's, Jean-Claude and I don't know if we named him Christophe P or something like that. And then later Phil came in and started doing Philippe P, and then Jean-Claude and Philippe sort of, were the P pair. But Chris, I guess, had studied French or something like that, and I knew no French. But I have the gravelly French accent, so I did Philippe P. No, I did Jean-Claude P, not Philippe.
Dave and the Giant Pickle was also the introduction of Larry's alter ego, Larry Boy.
I am that hero!
And I had an idea kicking around in my head for a Batman spoof where Bob would actually be Bat Bob and Larry would be Larry Boy.
When we introduced Larry Boy for the first time, Larry is not feeling special at the beginning, and so he thinks that he has to dress up like a superhero to feel special. And then Dave and the Giant Pickle is about, God being able to use you no matter how little you are or no matter, what you think your own abilities are. And then later Larry learns that, he's special just the way he is, but he can still dress up like Larry Boy if he wants to. Larry Boy's voice is a little bit different. I mean, it's not that easy to tell, but
Larry the Cucumber is, just kind of a little bit higher and, a little windier, I guess.
And then Larry Boy gets a little gruffer,
I'm Larry Boy. Say there, citizen.
So it just a little bit more gravel in the Larry voice. And actually, the Larry Boy voice, I can do Larry all day, but I need like 5 gallons of water in the booth if I'm going to do Larry Boy because it's really gravelly.
David was a shepherd, and so we thought, okay, what vegetable should we use for sheep? No, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. So then, can we use sheep for sheep? And if so, can they be scaled as if the vegetables were people to the sheep? Otherwise the vegetables would be this big and the sheep would be huge. And so that was the first time we really started stretching the metaphor, from going into this all-vegetable world to going into an all-vegetable world and finding an animal that's scaled, appropriately to the vegetables. And then we've, taken all sorts of liberties with that since. But it was a major milestone in veggie history to say we can introduce animals into this world and scale them down. And it changed everything.
I love my lips!
I Love My Lips, the silly song, has proven to be a favorite. When it started out, Mike came in and said, okay, I got the new silly song. It's I Love My Tongue.
And it was actually, at the time, kind of a yodeling thing, and I wanted to give Larry a reason to yodel, and so it started off as I Love My Tongue because,
Yodely, yodely.
There's just a lot of, that flying around when you're yodeling. And so, it started to turn into a song called I Love My Tongue, which just sounded kind of weird. And so Phil and I talked about it, and then I kind of started to rearrange it into I Love My Lips and made it more of a scat thing, for Larry to do scat, which was also kind of fun. And I saved the yodeling idea for a few years later when I did the Yodeling Veterinarian of the Alps, so the idea wasn't lost.
Well, what did you think of the story?
Oh my goodness, that was amazing. Dave was just a teeny little guy, but he beat Goliath, who was the biggest, strongest guy they'd ever seen.
It's one of my favorite videos, and I don't know if it's because I like the video as much or because it was a good memory making it, because it was on schedule, it was on budget, no one died, we had fun making it. It took 4 months, about 6 people for 4 months, and we turned it out. Like, well, that was easy.
Despite the fact that it was simple, it's still some people's favorites, because it's just a really cute little story with a great little lesson.
I laughed, I cried. It moved me, Bob.
There are some jokes in almost everything we've done, for the biblically literate. And in this case, it's when David has come to Saul, King Saul, and says, I want to go fight Goliath. And King Saul says, well, couldn't you just play your harp and I'll throw things at you? And that's an allusion, to what's going to happen later when several times King Saul tries to pin David to the wall with his spear while he's playing his harp for him. So there are little things like that we just kind of sprinkle in for the seminary students out there in the audience.
Yeah, I think the sheep were kind of Wallace and Gromit inspired, but yeah, I can't recall if they were our very first limbed characters. They might have been, yeah, because in Christmas, which was the show after this, we had penguins. It's pretty funny because some of their animation cycles are just kind of ridiculous. You go back and watch them, and they're just, their little legs are, just moving all wrong. They're just going twing, twing, twing. You want to put like a little, harp in back of them, little twanging harp in back of them. And then there's shots where they're buried into the sand up to their chest because, they were, when they were set up in the animation file, they were standing on level ground. But then we started to add, the hills in, and we at some point we saw the sheep were actually their legs were buried. But we just thought it was kind of funny. Plus, we were trying to, do the rendering fast, so we decided, we'll just leave it. there was a stiff wind that came up, and they got buried in the sand.
Tipping the sheep, I believe, as I was looking at, because sheep just stand around, they do nothing. Sheep do absolutely nothing, and that didn't seem right. We needed them to do something, and I think what popped into my head was cow tipping. Which I'm not exactly sure what that is even. I grew up in Iowa, and I'd heard of cow tipping. You can write me a letter and tell me exactly what it is. Is tipping over cows? I'm not sure. But I thought of that, and then I thought, okay, the sheep could just tip over, just randomly, just fall on their side. That's fun, and that gives them a personality, and they become a source of comedy throughout. Got an awkward moment, got a serious moment, have a sheep fall over. Hours of fun for the whole family. Archibald does the Rorschach tests with Larry, and of course brings up all those images in rapid succession that all look like, all sorts of things, but some of them do literally look like lips, but he thinks everything looks like lips. Mike originally had done it. I hadn't seen what he'd done, but in the middle of it, he put a picture of Newt Gingrich.
And I just thought it'd be really funny, to bring up, a completely just bizarre picture, and so the funniest thing that I could think of at the time was Newt Gingrich, because he was kind of all over the press and, kind of, in some ways sort of a, comical figure, at least in my mind, and, there's nothing political about that, but it's just, the name Newt.
And again, I'm thinking, okay, Mike, the people that are very conservative are going to think we're making fun of Newt Gingrich. People that are very liberal are going to think that we're endorsing Newt Gingrich. We're bound to, ruffle feathers. Let's not go political. And so then he came back with a picture of Sonny Bono.
I had got a signed autograph of Sonny Bono from one of my friends for a birthday present, kind of a gag birthday present. So, I had this photo, and so we put that in.
Everybody likes Sonny Bono. He's not a controversial figure at all. About 8 months after the video came out, Sonny Bono died.
And so out of respect for, his family, we wanted to change it.
And so we painted a picture of our first animator, Robert Ellis, and put him in there.
And then later, we ended up, replacing that with a caricature of me.
It's changing so frequently, I have no idea what'll show up next.